Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I'm Crosby Kemper, the director of the Kansas City Public Library. I'd like to welcome our audience here in Kansas City and across the nation, thanks to Book TV, for an evening with John Ferling. I'd like to mention a couple of upcoming events before I introduce Professor Ferling. We continue a series next week, next Wednesday, here at the Central Library that we started. As much of our programming is funded by the Kauffman Foundation, I particularly mention them because this was their idea and a great idea. We're doing a series called Kansas City Cradle of Entrepreneurs. Over time, we'll be doing a history of entrepreneurship in Kansas City, but right now we're having conversations with some of our great contemporary entrepreneurs. Gail Lozoff of Bagel and Bagel and Spin Pizza fame was here a few weeks ago, and next Wednesday, John McDonald, the brewing pioneer, founder of Boulevard Brewing Company, the finest beer in America. I hesitate to say that with Samuel Adams being on the program tonight, but I'll be interviewing John, and you'll hear some great stories about how he created America's greatest brewery. Also, by the way, I was his banker before I became a librarian, so I know the inside story. And Carrie McDonald, his sister, is one of our outstanding employees, and she has pictures and bail bonds receipts. So that should be fun. Also, this is obviously a history-loving audience. We have Terry Beckenbaugh here at the Central Library again on Thursday, August 11th, talking about one of the most important battles of the Civil War in our part of the country, maybe the most important, the Battle of Wilson's Creek. This is part of an ongoing series that, as many of you know, we're doing with the Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, and we're doing these more or less on the sesquicentennial anniversaries of the great battles of the Civil War. So look for that. And then I also want to mention we have a documentary film, an excellent film called 45 Years Across the Bridge, about the Battle of Selma, about the March on Selma, with filmmaker Michael Herzmark. And that'll be coming up at the Plaza Library on Thursday, August 25th. We've got a lot more coming up. And please pick up a calendar, get on our mailing list, join the Friends of the Library, find out about all the great stuff we have coming up. But tonight I want to introduce John Ferling, whose book Independence continues the great series of books on the Revolution that he's been writing. After a distinguished career as an academic at the University of West Georgia, as the biographer, among other things, of Joseph Galloway, his biography, The Loyalist Mind, probably the deepest study of a Tory, an opponent of the Revolution. After a distinguished career, academic career, he has written a series of books, Setting the World Ablaze, A Leap in the Dark, Adams versus Jefferson, Almost a Miracle, and the book that he brought with him to Kansas City to talk about here at the library a couple of years ago, The Ascent of George Washington, the Hidden Political Genius of an American Icon. In a short space of 7 or 8 years, he's produced this wonderful series of very well-written, deeply researched books that are popular history at their very best and academic research at its very best, a great combination. Unlike, he's of course an expert as a biographer of Galloway on the politics of Pennsylvania, and I do have to say his writing is a big part of what makes these books so good. Unlike what John Dickinson said about Joseph Galloway, the two great opponents in Pennsylvania politics, along with Benjamin Franklin, he does not commit continual breaches of the rules of grammar in utter ignorance of the English language, the pompous obscurity and sputtering prolixity. That's what Dickinson said about Galloway. On the contrary, he's the master of the telling quote, of the revealing anecdote, the view of Richard Henry Lee with his velvet-gloved hand, maimed hand, gesturing during his speeches, or Benjamin Franklin standing for 2 hours without moving his face as he's berated by a House of Commons committee, a moment that may have changed the course of the American Revolution. So humiliated was Franklin. He is a wonderful historian. He shines a bright light on character as the motivating factor of the American Revolution. And I'll quote one of the great quotes of John Adams, which he uses towards the end in his epilogue. What John Ferling does so well in all of these books, and will continue in his next book on Hamilton and Jefferson that we'll get him back for in another couple of years, is he explains how the Revolution commenced, how the Revolution was made in the minds and hearts of the people, in the character of the American people and the founders. So it's a great pleasure to introduce John Ferling.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming out on this very hot evening. I feel like I'm back in Atlanta again, as if I never left. Actually, today your temperature topped anything that we've hit this year by 5 degrees, but we can beat you on humidity. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about my book on independence. And let me say initially that the book actually had its origin in an article that I wrote for the Smithsonian Magazine that appeared back in 2004. But I was working on a long book on the Revolutionary War at that time, so I couldn't take that article forward and make a book out of it. And then I got sidetracked with George Washington and looking at how and why he became an American icon. But when that one was finished, then I wanted to get back to the book on independence. And this is a book that looks at the last 30 months before independence. It starts with the Boston Tea Party, essentially starts with the Boston Tea Party in December 1773 and runs down to July of 76. And I try to look at both sides. The subtitle of the book is The Struggle to Set America Free. And I try to look at the struggle both in America and in Great Britain. Tonight, because of time constraints, I'm only going to talk about what was going on in America, and particularly in the Continental Congress, and see if we can come to some resolution about why those who favored independence won this struggle in July of 1776. In the pre-dawn darkness of July 1st, 1776, John Adams awakened in his rooming house in Philadelphia, got up, and by candlelight wrote a letter to a former Georgia congressman and an old friend named Archibald Bullock. And Adams said in that letter that today is set for the greatest debate of all. Today we are going to debate whether to declare American independence. And as Adams was a leader of Congress and had his finger on the pulse of Congress, he knew what the outcome would be. In fact, in his next sentence to Bullock, Adams says in that letter, "May heaven bless the newborn republic." So he knew that independence was going to be declared. He just didn't know if it would be that day, July 1st, or the next day, July the 2nd, and he wasn't certain how many colonies would actually vote for independence. He was hoping it would be unanimous, but he did not know that for sure. And if Adams knew that independence was about to be declared, he, better than anyone, understood just how difficult it had been to get to this point. After all, the first great American protest against British policy had occurred 11 years earlier. The the British Army had occupied Boston 8 years